Yeah, this week has been a landmark week for the progress of this project. A company has been agreed by the university, is being spun out, and it's going to be called Nimrod Energy Limited, and that will represent the combined set of all these technologies that relate to compressed air and using those with offshore renewables. Seamus Garvey, Seamus Garvey. Having a company gives you access to many different pots of money that you can't access as a university academic. That's one reason. And the second reason is it lends a degree of seriousness to the whole campaign, that it's not just an intellectual exercise from one academic at Nottingham.
This is a device for extracting energy from the wind, and it's particularly appropriate for big wind turbines.
Certainly business has to be now chased, and we will be doing that. My nature is unchangeable. I'm a techie at heart, so as soon as we do have a contract of reasonable size, we'll be retaining some business enterprise people so that I don't have to do that.
Wind farms have long been viewed as a greener way of producing electricity, but there is of course one major drawback.
Yes, they're only useful when the wind's blowing. No wind means no power.
Ah yes, but a local engineer has come up with an idea that may change all that.
Tell me about the name. How is all this sort of stuff?
Well, that's an interesting tale of woe. My original instinct was to call it Wind Titan, but one of my colleagues looked up the words wind and Titan and discovered there was a project called Titan Wind in the United States. And that was too close, so we decided we couldn't do that. I then struggled a little to see, well, could I find a name that captured the true essence of the thing, which is largely about building in some energy storage with the capture of energy. And I thought contained wind might be an interesting name, but I was disabused of that idea because somebody told me it sounded like a medical condition, not unlike retained water, so I dropped that one. I was struggling for a patriotic theme of some description, and I recalled that Elgar, a famous British composer, probably the most famous British composer of classical music, had written this beautiful piece of music called Nimrod, which is extremely well known. If you're a classic FM fan, you hear it quite regularly. It gets trotted out at the proms every year in London. It's not Pomp and Circumstance, that's a different Elgar tune, but Nimrod is very well known and very moving piece. Dad's a music teacher, or retired now, but so Dad's background was always soaked in classical music, and if you ever had the audacity to put on anything that was popular music, then he would quickly adjust the setting on the radio so there was no more of that. I've heard the outcomes of 2 research grant applications. One bombed absolutely abysmally, actually. In fact, they published the ranking tables, and this was in the bottom 25%. It's a first for me to be in the bottom 25%. But anyway, that wasn't funded, and very fortunately, another one that I did apply for was funded by E.ON. To some extent, things will come to me, because we had a press release, and that's the most exciting thing. So this week, we had a press release about this company, and people have come to me. Now, most of those have just been people eager to do a story for one magazine or another, but I have had 2 inquiries which are serious propositions about possibilities to take this and actually plant an energy bag or 2 in the water. We need to start small. It's going to be small beginnings, but you know, it's the first step. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. These are the 2 bags. So I don't have names for them yet, but I'm trying to think of what would be a good name. The university will make a lot more money out of it than I will, but the wonderful thing about working for a university is that as an academic, if you do come up with some intellectual property that has some value, you are entitled to at least a proportion of the gains. And this is 2 parts of that internal piston. The internal piston is forced down inside the big piston when the big piston has pressure underneath it. There is risk. Today, I have not written a check, but in the next few weeks, I will be writing a check of personal money. And the risk in that case will be that if it all went terribly pear-shaped, I will be cycling into work for 40 more years. But I'm not too worried about that. I take a fairly philosophical view about that, in fact, because it's my experience that taking risks always leads to something good. So very likely this won't pan out the way that I expect it to pan, but I'm positive that it will pan out to be something good.
watch this space. This is a really cheap way to store energy, and I challenge anybody else to claim even that they can produce a system that can store energy in the sorts of quantities that we need it in the UK at levels as cheap as £10,000 per megawatt hour.
Nimrod Energy has a huge vision in the very long term, and I have to really keep that in my back pocket because most people are inclined to think that it's bonkers because of the scale of the thing. I have to take individual components that are actually very close to being commercial propositions at the moment that can be sold, such as the energy bags that you've seen in the tank, but also there's a patent that I've produced that will become the property of Nimrod Energy for floating wind turbine platforms that makes very, very good commercial sense. And I hope it will be adopted for the conventional wind turbine designs in the round 3 launch of wind farms around the UK.